The forest had always been my retreat, my sanctuary, a place I could disappear into for days without needing a reason. This time, though, it felt different. The air was colder than it should have been for early autumn, and the deeper I went, the more I noticed the silence. No birds, no insects, not even the rustling of leaves, just the sound of my own footsteps and the occasional crack of a branch under my boots. I tried not to let it bother me. I'd hiked and camped alone dozens of times, and the woods had always been good to me. But that afternoon, as the sun began to dip low behind the tall, closely knit trees, I felt something I hadn't felt before, watched. I shook it off, told myself I was just tired, just anxious to find a decent spot to set up camp before dark. That's when I heard a voice behind me. Beautiful evening for a hike, isn't it? I turned sharply. A man stood a few feet off the trail, just between two massive pines. He was tall and lanky, with sunken cheeks and a weathered face that looked like it belonged in a black and white photograph. His clothes were layered and torn at the edges, like he'd been living out here for a long time. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Didn't mean to startle you," he said. "No, it's all right. I lied. Didn't think anyone else was out here." He stepped forward, hands casually tucked in the pockets of his coat. "You looking for a place to set up camp?" "Yeah, just trying to find a spot before the light's gone." "You're in luck," he said. "There's a clearing not far from here. Good ground. Safe. I can show you, if you like." I should have said no. Every part of me wanted to say no. But something about the fatigue in my legs and the fading light made me nod instead. "Sure." We walked for maybe 10 minutes. He kept talking small facts about the trees, the way the land curved, how he'd spent most of his adult life in the woods. "The forest has a rhythm to it," he said. "Once you understand it, it never surprises you." I nodded politely. His tone was calm, almost entrancing. But there was something underneath his words, a tightness in his voice, like he was trying too hard to sound harmless. The clearing was exactly as he described: flat, soft grass, a ring of stones for a fire pit, and a small stream just behind the trees. I dropped my bag and looked around. "This is perfect." He nodded slowly. "Glad you think so." I started unpacking. He didn't leave. Instead, he crouched beside the fire pit and ran his hand over one of the stones. "This spot's been used a long time," he said. "Even before the maps showed this forest." I laughed awkwardly. "How long have you been coming here?" He looked up at me. His eyes were too still. "I never leave." He stood up slowly. "Most folks come out here looking for something. Silence. Escape. Some even think they'll find themselves. But what they don't realize is, the forest, it always takes something back." I paused, gripping my tent support pole tightly. "All right. Well, I think I can manage the rest on my own." He tilted his head, like he was trying to understand a foreign concept. "It's not safe. Not after dark." I forced a smile. "I've got bear spray. I'll be fine." His smile dropped. He took a step forward. "It's not bears you need to worry about." That's when I noticed the carvings. Subtle, almost invisible in the dimming light, symbols etched into the trees around the clearing. Deep, rough markings that looked more like claw scratches than anything man-made. I looked back at him. His eyes were no longer distant. They were focused, hungry. "You've already stepped inside the circle," he said. "There's no leaving now." I backed away slowly, scanning the perimeter of the clearing. The symbols in the bark weren't random. They circled the entire site like a barrier. I hadn't noticed them when I arrived, but now they pulsed with strange meaning. Some part of me understood that I had crossed into something I wasn't supposed to see. And he was still there, between me and the trail, watching. "You should rest," he said. "It'll be easier that way." I didn't respond. I grabbed the nearest thing I could use as a weapon, my hatchet, and took a step toward the edge of the clearing. He moved too fast. His hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. His grip was like iron. No warmth. No hesitation. "You belong to the forest now," he said quietly. "You were invited, and you accepted." I yanked my arm free and swung the hatchet. It grazed his shoulder, just enough to make him stumble. I didn't wait for a reaction. I turned and ran. The trail was gone. I ran blindly through the underbrush, branches slapping my face, thorns tearing at my jacket. I couldn't hear anything except my own heartbeat and the wind screaming through the trees. And behind it, something else, his voice, calling, calm and steady, never out of breath. You'll tire before I do. You'll stop. They always stop. The forest wasn't letting me leave. Every direction looked the same. The trees were impossibly dense, shifting with each step I took. I no longer trusted the ground beneath my feet. Then, through the darkness, I saw movement, someone crouched behind a log, beckoning to me. Over here, she whispered. No, I didn't question it. I dove behind the log. The woman was covered in dirt and moss, her eyes hollow but sharp. She grabbed my jacket and pulled me low. He marked you, she whispered. If you'd stayed one more hour, you'd never leave. Who is he? I whispered back. He's a servant now. The forest chose him. He lures others to feed the roots. I wanted to cry, but there wasn't time. There's only one way to sever the bond, she said. Come with me. She led me deeper into the woods. We moved fast, silent. The forest around us felt ancient, like we were walking into the lungs of something that had been breathing since before man learned to speak. Finally, we reached a clearing unlike the first. No stones, no fire pit, only a stone altar covered in glowing red symbols. This is the heart, she said. He draws power from it. It feeds him, keeps him alive. The air shimmered. Trees groaned. He had found us. He stepped into the clearing, not walking but drifting. His body was no longer human. Bark covered his limbs. Roots wrapped around his legs and spine. His eyes were black pits. You should have stayed, he hissed. She pulled a knife and lunged at him. Break the altar, she screamed. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed a rock and brought it down on the altar. Once, twice. On the third strike, the symbols glowed violently and then cracked. The ground trembled. The forest howled. The man shrieked, his body unraveling like smoke in a wind tunnel. His limbs twisted and splintered, breaking into ash and bark. The altar split in two. The woman grabbed my hand, and we ran. We ran without speaking, tearing through the forest like animals in flight. Behind us, the sounds of the altar breaking still echoed, low, bone-rattling cracks that didn't just shake the earth but seemed to rip through something deeper. The trees moaned. The air itself tasted strange, metallic, like blood and water. With every step we took, it felt like the forest was folding inward, like it was trying to collapse around us. The woman gripped my hand tightly, tugging me through narrow paths I wouldn't have seen on my own. The forest had changed. What was once dense and chaotic was now strangely geometric. The trees twisted unnaturally, bending inward at odd angles, forming almost a tunnel overhead. The branches groaned as they swayed, but there was no wind. There hadn't been any wind since we destroyed the stone. We have to reach the edge before it resets, the woman panted. If we don't, it rebuilds. What do you mean, resets? I asked, breathless. She didn't answer. Roots rose out of the ground in our path, forcing us to leap over them. At one point, the earth itself seemed to breathe, pulsing beneath our feet like we were running across the back of something slumbering just beneath the surface. I didn't ask questions. I just ran. Whatever we'd unleashed or angered wasn't gone. Not fully. It was wounded, and it wanted us to know it was still watching. We broke through a thick wall of vines and emerged into a different part of the woods. The trees were smaller here, younger, spaced wider apart. The stars were visible again overhead, and I felt, for the first time in hours, air in my lungs that didn't feel stolen. The woman slowed, resting her hands on her knees as she caught her breath. I collapsed to the ground, gasping, my whole body trembling. We're close, she said after a long silence. Another mile, maybe. I looked back. The forest we'd come from was cloaked in fog. Thick, milky, unnatural. It curled and shifted like it was alive, waiting, watching. You said he was just a servant, I said. That the altar was only part of it. She nodded slowly. He was just a doorway, a vessel. The forest is older than him. older than names. He's not the first. He won't be the last. Why me? I asked. Why did it choose me? She turned and looked at me then. Really looked. Her eyes weren't cruel, but they were hollow, like someone who had seen the end and kept walking anyway. It doesn't choose at random, she said. It picks those who are already drifting, those already lost, people who won't be missed. You were already fading when you came here. The forest just finished what life had already started. I wanted to argue, to say she was wrong, but the words caught in my throat. She wasn't wrong. The silence that followed was heavy, but brief. Behind us, deep in the woods, something snapped. A tree, maybe, or something larger. The ground rumbled slightly, just enough to make me rise to my feet. Then I saw it. Emerging from the fog, standing just beyond the trees, was a figure. It looked like him, but it wasn't. Not anymore. His limbs were longer now, stretched like wet clay pulled too thin. His skin shimmered in patches like rotting bark, peeling and reforming constantly. His eyes were hollow, glowing faintly red, and from his chest, something moved. A mass of writhing black roots twisted beneath the skin like snakes fighting inside a sack. The woman stepped in front of me. Keep going, she whispered. You can make it out. I'll hold him. I'm not leaving you, I said. You have to, she snapped, looking over her shoulder. He wants you, not me. You broke his tether. He wants it back. The thing that had once been the stranger stepped forward, not walking, gliding. The air shimmered around it. Every step it took made the ground groan. I could feel its presence in my skull, like it was pressing into my thoughts. I heard whispers that weren't mine, saw flickers of memories that didn't belong to me. And I understood something then. It wasn't hunting me out of anger. It was calling me back. I turned and ran, just as the woman screamed. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see what he became. I didn't want to know what she became. I just ran, through the trees, down a slope slick with moss, until the forest started to thin again. And then, at the edge of everything, road. An actual dirt road. And headlights. A truck barreled around a bend and came to a halt inches from me. The driver jumped out, yelling something, but I couldn't hear him. All I could hear was the roar of blood in my ears and the trees behind me, whispering my name. I was pulled into the truck and driven away. I don't remember the driver's face. I don't remember what town we ended up in. Only that the further we got, the lighter the air became. But something came with me. For days, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in the clearing, back in the circle, back in the forest. Eventually, I stopped talking about it. The story sounded insane out loud. People would think I had a breakdown. Maybe I did, but I know what I saw. I know what I heard. And I know the forest isn't finished with me. I see it sometimes, flashes and reflections, symbols etched into concrete walls, tree bark patterns that match the ones from the circle. And on the nights I dream, I hear him again. The stranger's voice, just behind my ear. You stepped inside the circle, and the forest never forgets its offerings. I don't go near woods anymore, but the woods are patient. They don't need to chase you. They just wait for you to come back. And one day, I might. It was just past midnight when my phone buzzed with another ride request. I was already debating whether to call it a night, but something about the quiet made me keep going. The city had grown still. The streets, usually humming with life even at night, were empty and washed in amber light from flickering street lamps. I glanced at the screen. Pick up, downtown. Drop off. Oakwood Avenue, a quiet, tree-lined road on the outskirts. The icon on the map blinked, and I accepted without thinking. When I pulled up to the address, there was only one person standing beneath a dim streetlight. Tall, lean, wearing a long dark coat and a fedora that shadowed his face. He didn't wave or step forward, just stood there until I unlocked the doors. Evening, I offered, keeping my tone casual. You heading to Oakwood? He nodded once, slowly, and slid into the back seat without a word. The air changed immediately, not just the smell, though there was something faint and strange about it, like rotting wood or wet leaves, but the feel of it. The temperature dropped. The windows fogged slightly from the inside. I shook it off and pulled away from the curb. For a while, we drove in silence. I kept my eyes on the road, but I could feel him staring through the rearview mirror, unblinking, locked in. I tried to focus on the lights ahead, the hum of the engine, anything that felt normal. "You drive often at night?" he asked suddenly. His voice was low, gravelly, and his accent. I couldn't place it. It wasn't foreign exactly, just old, like something from another time. "Yeah," I said carefully. "Nights quieter, easier to think." He hummed, as if amused. "You meet interesting people." I glanced in the mirror again. His eyes were pale and empty, like all the color had been drained out of them. They didn't blink. "Sometimes," I said. "Most people are just tired. Want to get home." "And you?" he asked, leaning forward slightly. "What are you trying to get away from?" My grip tightened on the steering wheel. "What do you mean?" "Your schedule," he said. "You said night was easier. Easier to think. So tell me, what is it you don't want to think about?" I didn't answer. The streets started to change. Fewer houses. Fewer lights. We were further out than I'd realized, drifting past unfamiliar intersections and overgrown lots. I glanced at the GPS, but the signal flickered, lagging behind. The drop-off pin had moved. That wasn't right. I slowed slightly. "We're almost there." He didn't respond. Instead, he leaned back again, his face half in shadow. "Tell me about your family," he said softly. My heart stopped for a second. I hadn't said anything about them. Not to him. Not on my profile. Well, don't really have much family." I lied. "No," he said. "That's not what your profile says." I blinked. "What?" "Says you have a sister. Millbrook, right? Quiet town. Pretty sunsets. She's alone tonight." My stomach dropped. I turned sharply to look at him. "How do you know that?" He smiled. "I know everything about you." My heart thudded in my chest, a dull, sickening rhythm. I tried to keep my voice steady. "I think you're mistaking me for someone else." He chuckled softly. It wasn't a laugh that meant amusement. It was the sound someone makes when they already know how the story ends. "Oh, I don't think so." "Sarah." He used my name like a blade, gentle, but sharp enough to cut through all the pretense. I stared at him through the rearview mirror. His smile was faint but unwavering, his pale eyes glittering like cracked glass in the dim light of the dashboard. There was a moment of complete silence, and then I spoke, my voice shaking just enough to give me away. "I think there's been some kind of mistake. Maybe we should end the ride here." He didn't move. "Keep driving." His tone shifted. No longer conversational. No longer pretending. It was cold. Commanding. The kind of voice that didn't accept questions. "We're not finished yet," he said. My fingers hovered near the dashboard screen, ready to end the ride manually, but I saw him move, just slightly, and my blood turned to ice. His hand slid slowly into his coat. I didn't know what he was reaching for, but I didn't wait to find out. I slammed on the brakes. The car screeched to a halt in the middle of the road, tires shrieking into the silence. He lurched forward, catching himself on the back of my seat. I didn't wait. I tore off my seatbelt, flung open the door, and ran. Behind me, I heard the passenger door slam open, and then his voice, calm, smooth, too close. "Don't run, Sarah." I sprinted through the dark, unfamiliar neighborhood, ducking between houses, vaulting fences I barely saw. Everything felt surreal, dreamlike. The kind of nightmare where your limbs don't respond fast enough, and the shadows are too thick. The streets were wrong, twisted. The layout made no sense, like I was running through a maze built from pieces of other people's lives. Every porch light was off. Every window was dark. I turned a corner and tripped over a raised patch of sidewalk, falling hard. My knees scraped the pavement. I scrambled to my feet, but it was too late. A hand closed around my ankle and yanked. I screamed. He dragged me backward, his grip impossibly strong. I kicked out, catching him in the chest. He didn't even flinch. He flipped me onto my back with a single, fluid motion and knelt over me. In the moonlight, I saw his face clearly for the first time. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even excited. He was calm, neutral, like this was routine. Now, he said softly, almost pityingly. That wasn't very polite, Sarah. We were having such a lovely conversation. I thrashed beneath him. What do you want? He tilted his head, eyes scanning my face like he was trying to memorize it. I already told you. I want to play a game. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a knife. It wasn't large. It wasn't flashy. But it was wickedly sharp and clean, as if it had just been sharpened for one purpose. I froze. He held the blade casually, like it was part of him, like it belonged in his hand. It's a simple game, he said. I ask questions. You answer truthfully. I swallowed hard. And if I don't? He smiled. Then we see what lies look like when we peel them away. My whole body was shaking now. Why are you doing this? He raised a finger, tooting. That's not how the game works. I asked first. I stared up at him, unable to look away from the knife. First question, he said, voice low. Why did you really start driving at night? I hesitated. The truth was embarrassing, but the knife made the answer simple. I was avoiding someone, I said, voice barely above a whisper. An ex. He wouldn't leave me alone. I thought working nights would make me harder to track. He nodded slowly, as if pleased. Very good, Sarah. Honesty suits you. He traced the flat side of the blade along his own arm, just once, gently. Next question, he said. What's your biggest fear? My heart pounded harder. I thought of saying something safe. Heights. Spiders. Darkness. But I knew he'd know if I lied. Being helpless, I whispered. Not being in control. His eyes narrowed slightly. How poetic, he said. Then, with a flash of movement, he leaned in close, his face inches from mine. I could feel his breath on my skin. And how in control do you feel right now? I bit down a sob. Please, I said. Let me go. You don't have to do this. He straightened slowly, sighing like a disappointed parent. No. That's not how the game works. Then, out of nowhere, light exploded across us. Headlights. A car had turned into the alley. Its high beams blasted through the darkness, illuminating everything. The man snarled, his face twisting in the sudden light. His calm dissolved in an instant. He pushed off me and fled into the shadows, disappearing between buildings like smoke. The car skidded to a stop beside me, and a familiar face leaned out of the window. It was Marge, the other rideshare driver I'd seen around before. Older. Kind. The kind of woman who packed granola bars for her passengers and still listened to jazz on the radio. Sarah? My God. Are you all right? I stumbled into the passenger seat, my hands shaking uncontrollably. Marge, how did you? I got a ping about a canceled ride nearby, she said. Then something just felt wrong. She didn't need to say more. I understood. We drove in silence, but the image of his face burned in my mind. He had known everything. Not just about my job, not just my name. He had known me, and as we turned the corner, I caught one last glimpse of him, standing perfectly still in the shadow of a street light, his expression blank, his hands folded neatly behind his back. He watched us go without moving an inch. The ride home with Marge felt like it took hours, though it couldn't have been more than 15 minutes. My mind had stopped forming coherent thoughts. Everything blurred. The glow of streetlights, the hum of the tires on asphalt, the way her hands clenched the steering wheel just a little too tight. I couldn't stop shaking. My knees kept bouncing. I gripped the passenger side door like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. She didn't press me for answers, just kept glancing sideways, her concern written across her face like bruises. When we pulled up outside my apartment, I sat there for a moment, staring at the dark building, half expecting him to already be waiting at my door. You should go to the police, Marge said softly. Tell them everything. I don't even know what to tell them, I murmured. He didn't take anything. He didn't leave anything. He just knew. You think he'll come back? I didn't answer, because I didn't think he would come back. I knew. The next few days passed in a haze. I gave a shaky report to the police. They were kind, professional, but their eyes betrayed what they were thinking. No license plate. No identifying info. No threats made, no injuries. It would be marked as suspicious activity. Nothing more. I changed my phone number, deactivated the Rideshare app, quit driving altogether. I moved out of that apartment a week later, unable to sleep without waking to the sound of phantom footsteps in the hall. But none of it helped, because the fear had already moved in, quietly, like a roommate that didn't need to eat or speak or sleep. It just sat there, every hour of every day, breathing on the back of my neck, waiting. Sometimes I'd see him, not clearly, but in reflections, in the back seat of parked cars, on the edge of street corners where the lights never fully reached, never doing anything, just standing there, watching, and always with that expression, calm, polite, waiting for me to admit that this wasn't over. I tried to ignore it, told myself it was trauma, my brain creating shadows to fill in the gaps. But then the note started. The first one was tucked under my windshield wiper. We never finished our game. The second arrived folded in my mailbox, even after I moved again. No stamp, no name, just 5 words, written in the same thin, steady script. Lies have sharp consequences, Sarah. The third was taped to my bedroom mirror. I moved again. I stopped sleeping. I stopped answering calls I didn't recognize. I started seeing his face in my dreams, no longer fully human, pale and stretched, with eyes that were too wide and too empty, and a smile that never moved. In those dreams, I'm always in the driver's seat. He's always in the back. And we're always heading toward a place that doesn't exist on any map. Oakwood Avenue. But the road keeps stretching. It never ends. And his voice, calm as ever, always begins the same way. Let's play again. The truth is, I don't know if he was a man. I don't know if he ever was. He didn't want money, or revenge, or blood. He wanted the game. He wanted to peel me open, question by question, until there was nothing left but fear and obedience. And I think, somewhere deep inside me, I knew that night was only the first round. He's still out there, and he's waiting for my next move. But this time, the game won't be played in the back seat of my car. This time, he's bringing it home. Welcome home. From the moment we pulled into the driveway, something felt wrong. The street looked normal enough, quiet, tree-lined, with white picket fences and seasonal wreaths. A typical suburban dream. But as the car rolled to a stop in front of our new Victorian-style home, I felt it. The stillness. The way the wind didn't quite move the leaves. The sudden hush that seemed to fall over the neighborhood like a dropped curtain. Mark, my husband, shut off the engine and smiled at me like everything was perfect. Home sweet home, he said. In the back seat, Lily and Tom, our kids, were practically vibrating with excitement, eager to explore every creaking corner of their new castle. I tried to force a smile back. I told myself it was just the exhaustion talking. Moving is stressful, but even as we stepped out of the car, I could feel the eyes. Not directly, nothing overt, just movement behind curtains. Windows where the blinds swayed, only to fall still the moment I turned. Neighbors came out to greet us, all smiles and casseroles and friendly handshakes. Too friendly, their grins too wide, their questions too precise. They knew the house's square footage. They knew our kids' names before we said them. I brushed it off as small-town warmth. They probably saw the moving truck, Mark said. They're just trying to welcome us. But I didn't like how they looked at the kids, like they were measuring something. The first week was a blur of boxes, routines, and introductions. Every morning, someone left fresh-cut flowers on our porch. No note. Every evening, our trash cans were pulled back in before I got home. Our lawn? Mowed before the weekend. Mark found it charming. I think we hit the jackpot, he said one night, chewing on baked ziti from the Johnsons next door. This is the first time people have actually cared. But it wasn't caring. It was control. The first real crack came on a Thursday. I had stepped into the kitchen and found Mrs. Johnson standing in our backyard, not near the fence, not trimming her hedges, standing directly in the grass, just staring into our window. When she saw me, she waved like it was perfectly normal. Then she smiled tight, too many teeth, and walked away without explanation. That night, I told Mark. "They're too involved," I said. "It's not neighborly. It's invasive." He chuckled, brushing it off. "You've been in the city too long. This is just how it works in places like this. It's community." No matter how I tried to convince myself he was right, the feeling kept growing. The kids came home quieter. Lily said her classmates warned her not to go into the basement at night. Tom said a boy at school asked if we brought anything cursed with us. I tried to ask the principal, but the school said the kids were adjusting beautifully. That night, after the kids went to bed, I couldn't sleep. Something pulled at me. I wandered down to the living room and noticed something that hadn't been there before: symbols, carved into the floorboards beneath the rug. Circular, strange, and old. They were faint, like someone had tried to sand them out. But they were there. I pulled out my phone and took photos. Then I started researching. Public records, old newspaper archives, anything tied to the address. It didn't take long. 7 families had lived here before us in the past 40 years. 6 had moved out within the first year, no resale, just abandonment. 1 family had vanished. No forwarding address. No trace. 1 headline stuck out: "Missing family's house cleaned out by town volunteers within 24 hours." The article praised the neighborhood for their efficiency. No follow-up story. No police statement. I felt sick. That night, I sat up until dawn, listening. The house didn't creak like it used to. It breathed. The next morning, I didn't tell Mark what I'd found. I wanted to believe it was some weird coincidence, bad luck, or just a town with a strange turnover. But the way the neighbors greeted me that day was different. Still smiling, still polite, but it felt strained, like they could tell I'd started asking questions. Mrs. Johnson brought over another casserole. She stood too close when she handed it to me, her hand brushing mine deliberately. "Are the children adjusting?" she asked, and though her tone was sweet, the way her eyes held mine made it feel like a test. "They're fine," I replied. "Good," she said, smiling wide. "We don't want them to feel unsettled." That evening, I asked Mark again. "Don't you think it's strange how they just show up all the time? No warning, no boundaries." He looked at me, distracted, glass of wine in hand. "You're overthinking it. They're nice people, and they're trying to make us feel welcome. Maybe you should try meeting them halfway." It wasn't just him brushing me off, it was the way he said it. Flat, measured, like he was reciting something he didn't even realize he'd been told to say. That night, I checked the locks 3 times. I stared at the carved floorboards until the patterns began to move in my peripheral vision. Sometime past midnight, I got up and padded down to the basement, empty laundry basket in my arms, just to give myself an excuse. The door was unlocked. I hadn't unlocked it. The basement light flicked on slowly, and for a moment I swore I saw a shadow at the bottom of the stairs, just for a blink, moving away as the light filled the space. I descended carefully. The basement smelled like damp wood and something older: stone, maybe earth. I flipped on the second light, and the shadows peeled back just enough to reveal the far wall. It was made of brick, uneven and rough, like it had been patched together with different kinds of stone over the years. Then I saw the scratch marks. Thin, deep, like fingernails. Dozens of them, all clustered around the base of the wall. Suddenly, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out. An unknown number. 1 word in the text. "Stop." I stared at the screen until the light went out. Not the phone light. The basement. The bulb had clicked off. I stood frozen for maybe 5 seconds. Then I backed up the stairs, slowly, 1 step at a time, refusing to turn around. I shut the basement door and locked it. The next morning, I went back to the town library. The woman at the front desk, older, gray hair in a tight bun, the type who probably ran this place since the 60s, watched me the whole time I was in the archives. I could feel her gaze from across the room, always just hovering above the bookshelves. I dug deeper this time. Not just house records, but historical town reports, civic event listings, missing persons notices. Every fall, there was mention of a founders festival. No pictures. No details. But the schedule always ended with a line in tiny print. Location, newest residence. That was us. I printed out what I could and left quickly, but not before the librarian called out behind me. Found what you needed? I turned. Excuse me. She smiled. It's important to learn your town's history, especially if you're going to be part of it. That night, I came home to find the living room full. Mark sat in the center of the couch, hands clasped in his lap, flanked by neighbors on either side, Mrs. Johnson, Mr. Thompson, the school principal, even the mailman. They were all waiting. I froze in the doorway. Mark smiled at me, but it was distant, empty, like a doll trained to mimic human behavior. We were just talking about the festival, he said. Mrs. Johnson stood slowly, brushing off her skirt. It's tradition, you see. The newest family always hosts. It's been that way since the founding. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. My eyes flicked to the rug in the middle of the room, just a slight shift in the corner. The carved floorboard was showing again. Palmer Justice Cat Black Large Square Seedling Seed Goat Pole Prince Drops Droplet Dog Face Bone Snake, July 12th, 2025 at 12:34 a.m. Mrs. Johnson's voice dropped to a murmur. You've already accepted the gift, dear. The town is very grateful. I finally found my voice, though it sounded nothing like mine. Where are the kids? Mr. Thompson smiled. Oh, they're at the park with the others. Don't worry. They're in good hands. It wasn't what he said, it was how he said it. Like the words themselves were empty, like something else was speaking through him. I nodded slowly. I think I need to lie down. Mrs. Johnson reached out and touched my shoulder. Her hand was cold. Her fingers lingered. Yes, you should rest. We'll handle everything. I climbed the stairs without looking back. When I got to the bedroom, I didn't sit. I didn't cry. I grabbed a bag. Then I heard footsteps on the stairs. Heavy, deliberate, too slow to be Mark. The footsteps on the stairs came slowly, too slow to belong to a child, too heavy to belong to anyone who wasn't certain I was waiting. I tightened my grip around the brass lamp, inching toward the closet, heart pounding so loudly I was sure they'd hear it from the hallway. The door creaked slightly as it began to open, and I raised the lamp, ready to swing. But I stopped. It wasn't one of the neighbors. It was Lily. She stood in the doorway, her nightgown softly lit by the hallway light, her eyes wide but blank, like she had just woken from a dream she didn't fully understand. She didn't say anything. She just stepped into the room, shut the door behind her, and stood there, like a statue waiting for instruction. I set the lamp down and crouched in front of her. Where's Tom? I asked. Where's your brother? She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, round charm. It was wooden, hand-carved, and the moment I saw it, my stomach turned. It bore the same symbol from the floorboards, sharp lines inside a ring, something between a sigil and a map. The edges were stained dark, and the back looked scorched. They gave it to me, she said. Who? She looked at me then, and her voice was calm. Everyone. My mouth went dry. Where's your brother, Lily? He's asleep, she said. He won't wake up until it's done. I stood quickly, heart racing. We're leaving. Now, get your shoes. She didn't move. You can't go. Watch me. They said it's worse when people run, she said quietly, almost apologetically. They said it's better if we stay. That way, it's clean. The knock came before I could respond. One knock. Firm. No pounding. No yelling. Just a single, deliberate knock from downstairs that made my blood run cold. I grabbed Lily's hand and pulled her with me. We rushed down the hallway into Tom's room. He was in bed, exactly as Lily said, breathing, but faintly. I tried to wake him, shook him gently at first, then harder. His eyelids fluttered, but he didn't respond. The knock came again. Another single thud. Then the front door creaked open. No one had gone to unlock it. Footsteps filled the hallway downstairs, soft and many. I didn't even need to look. I knew who it was. Or rather, what? They moved like one body, one presence wearing different faces, neighbors we'd smiled at, Wave 2, shared meals with. People who brought us baked goods and watched our children walk to school. They were here now, in our home, filling it with that same unnatural calm they had carried from the beginning. I locked the bedroom door, dragging a dresser in front of it with a grunt. Lily stood near Tom's bed, the charm still clutched in her small hand, her expression strangely resigned. "They're here for the offering," she whispered. I backed away from the door. Offering to what? They didn't say. The doorknob jiggled once, then stopped. There was no banging, no yelling, just silence. The kind of silence that fills a room when something knows it's already won. Then I heard his voice. "Mark." "Honey," he called softly from the other side. "Can you open the door?" My knees buckled. "Mark, I need you to come downstairs. Everything's okay. They just want to talk." I didn't answer. "We're all part of this now," he continued, his voice muffled. "The town survives because we give it what it asks for. That's how it's always been." I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from sobbing. "What did they do to you?" "I understand now," he said gently. "It's not evil. It just is. And we have a chance to be part of something bigger than ourselves. We just have to give something back." There was a pause. I already chose. "No," I whispered. "I did it for you. For the kids. If it takes me, it won't take you." The door went silent again. When I finally opened it, the hallway was empty. So was the house. I ran from room to room calling his name. Nothing. Not a sound. Not a trace. Only the faint scent of smoke and cedar. Lily followed me the whole time, still holding the charm. Palmer Justice Cat Black Large Square Seedling Seed Goat Paw Prints Drops Droplet Dog Face Bone Snake. July 12th, 2025 at 1:07 a.m. Outside, the neighbors were back on their porches, waving, smiling. Mark was never seen again. There was no funeral, no body, no questions, just a quiet understanding that he was gone, and the town continued. The next day, the park held a small celebration. Children played. Families laughed. Someone grilled hot dogs. Lily and Tom returned to school. Everyone acted as if nothing had happened at all. Except me. I tried to leave with the kids a week later. Packed bags. Got in the car. But the road out of town no longer existed. Where the highway once curved past the lake, there was now only thick, ancient forest. No signs. No sounds. The GPS spun endlessly. I drove for hours and ended up back on our street. Every time. The kids never seemed to mind. They adjusted too quickly. Lily stopped talking about the charm. Tom never asked where Mark went. They acted as though he'd never existed, like the town had taken the memory of him too. Sometimes at night, I hear him, not calling out, not begging, just speaking, softly, calmly. This is the cost. This is the way. When I wake up, there's always something small waiting at the foot of the bed, a stone, a feather, a doll's eye. Once, there was a single pine cone, tied with twine, carved with the symbol from the floor. The offering had been accepted, but the town doesn't forget. It never stops watching, and one day it'll need another.